Yo, what's up, everybody, and welcome to the Meet Me on Main Street podcast. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about my love for Disney, why I decided to become a Disney travel agent, and some of the Disney festivities that I'm looking forward to in the up and coming months. Today is August 4th, 2025, and this is episode 8 of the Meet Me on Main Street podcast. Let's do it. Yo, what's up, my people? It's your guy, Joey Belveduto, aka Nostalgic Belv. And as always, I hope you are having a wonderful day. Wherever you're listening from, whenever you're listening to this, I just hope there's nothing but positive good vibes in your life right now. As always, we are going to jump right into some Disney news. So a major refurbish has been announced for Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger earlier this year. We knew this was coming, and as of August 4th, which is today, the ride has officially closed. Now, all we know is that it's going to reopen sometime in 2026, and this attraction is going to include a new scene featuring a new character. We can also expect new ride vehicles and new laser blasters as well. This will give us another thing to look forward to in the near future. Now, jumping on over to Disney Springs, we're going to Gideon's. It's a new month, which means a new cookie, and Gideon's brought back the butterscotch cookie. Guys, I'm looking at a picture of this one online right now, and it's really just got my mouth watering. Butterscotch is like one of my favorite flavors of all time. So, although I won't be getting down there in August, if you guys try this cookie, let me know how it is. Construction continues over in Disney's Hollywood Studios, and the Muppets store has now been fully demolished, making room for the new Monsters, Inc. themed area. And that just about wraps it up for our Disney news this week. So guys, this week, the main concept of this episode is going to be a little different. I want to throw out there, first of all, I appreciate all of you guys following me on my social medias, following me on Instagram and especially TikTok. I've had a couple TikTok videos do really well recently. I have one that just pushed 200,000 views, and it's continuing to grow. So the other day I did post on my TikTok, what would you guys like to hear about in the next episode? And I actually had quite a few people message and say that they wanted to hear the story of, how I got so hooked on Disney and how I got hooked on becoming a travel guide or a Disney travel agent. So with that being said, guys, that's one thing I'd like to start off the episode with today before we kind of jump into some other stuff later on in the episode. So let's start back with some of my earliest memories of Disney. Of course, growing up, watching the VHS tapes, the clamshells, some of my favorite Disney movies growing up were, of course, Toy Story, Monsters, Inc., Lion King, and one that isn't always brought up so much by other people, but one of my favorite movies was Spirit. So I have a very typical story, just like every other family in the United States. Grew up, not a ton of money, didn't really have the ability to afford going to Disney. But my dad, way back in the day, I'm originally from New Jersey. He owned a janitorial cleaning service up in North Jersey where he cleaned all different types of buildings for his business. And I believe it was a Toyota dealership that he was cleaning. He was emptying a garbage in the head boss's office, and there were tickets to Disney in his garbage. And when he looked at them, things were a little different back then. It wasn't like there are now where you could buy your tickets online and have to scan them. If you had the ticket, you just brought it up and they let you in. And as far as I know, you could have tickets as far back as, the 80s. And as long as they weren't stamped or the admission side was ripped off, you could still use those tickets today, supposedly. So yeah, my dad found some tickets in a garbage can at one of his jobs. He brought it up to the boss and he said that, somebody sent those to him as a thank you and he had no interest in going. So he just threw them away. And that is what ended up getting us our first trip down to Disney. My dad had a pretty big van. I think it seated about 8 people. and it had one of those like little 13-inch TVs in there with the VCR. You know, I'm going back. This is 1999. We had the Nintendo 64 set up, and we took a trip from North Jersey down to Orlando, Florida. I believe it took about 18 to 20 hours. You know, it was myself, my two brothers, and my mom and my dad. So we know we had to stop and eat. I think my dad even stopped at a couple rest stops and took an hour nap. But I was 4 years old at that time, so there's only so much that I remember. I do have some vague memories of that trip down to Orlando. Of course, looking at photos kind of help you get your memory going again, and I do remember a little bit here and there. I do actually specifically remember I took a hard fall, and at the time it was MGM, and I hit my eye off a step, and I had a pretty gnarly black eye the entire trip down there. Pretty much, I think it was like day two, so the whole trip, all of the photos, I have a pretty nasty black eye. But yeah, so that was my first trip down to Disney. Once again, very, very young, don't remember very much of it, but I just remember feeling the magic. You know, that's one thing that always comes into play is Disney is just so magical for young kids. So fast forward in my life a little bit more. My dad, he continued to do the cleaning thing, and he decided to relocate us up to Scranton, Pennsylvania, which is where I currently am now as well. And at the time, it was around 2008. This is when the economic crash kind of hit, and my dad's business that he started up here in Scranton pretty much failed, because the economy just was not doing very well at the time. And he ended up calling back a lot of his accounts down in Jersey that he was cleaning, asked if he could come back, and he commuted 6 days a week, him and my mom, back down to Jersey, 6 days a week. So my childhood was, I spent a lot of time alone, because my parents really had no choice. They had to work. My brothers, they were 10 years older than me. So by this time, they're pretty much wrapped up, move out of the house. And I spent a lot of time myself, just playing basketball, doing whatever I was doing. Now, I know this kind of seems off topic, but it's going to come into play later on as well. So my dad ended up buying into a new business. And this business, every year, they would do a convention somewhere in the United States where you would go, you get some training in, you could bring your family. So it was somewhat of a training session, but also it was a vacation for all of the franchisees. And the one time it was down in Orlando, Florida. And while we were there, myself, my mom, dad, and my brother Adam, we decided to go to Universal Studios. And this was the first time I ever went to Universal. And Universal just hit me in such a different way because I was such a big comic book kid growing up. I was obsessed with Marvel, Spider-Man, X-Men, all of those types of things. So being able to go and see this, it just left this everlasting print on my brain of, man, how am I going to get back here? Like, I wish I could live here. Every kid at some point when they go to Disney or Universal, just they want to be able to live there, So by this time, YouTube's really, really popping off, and I'm on YouTube just watching all of these videos of people riding these rides, trying to get my fix. If I can't be there, I want to somehow experience the ride one way or another. So I used to spend a lot of time on YouTube watching a lot of the rides and seeing all the new stuff that was coming to Disney and Universal. So let's fast forward on this timeline. We're going to shoot up to 2013. And I just graduated high school, and my brother Adam lands me a job working with him 40 hours a week at a place called Penguin Book Publishing. And I basically fulfilled orders for 40 hours a week, putting books in boxes, and it was extremely boring. And I remember when I first got in there, everyone was like, wow, you are so lucky to get in here. There's always a huge waiting list to get in here. This is one of the biggest warehouses around. You always got to know somebody to get in here. Everybody is just super appreciative of working there. And I just remember how much I hated it. I said, if this is the best warehouse out there and I hate it this much, I don't see how I have a future here because I just hated it so much. So long story short, I get some vacation time, and my brother says, "Yo, we haven't been to Disney or Universal in years. Why don't we take a trip out there?" So we flew right out of Scranton, Avoca, and we took a weekend trip down to Disney. And after quite a few years of not being there, it kind of reopened everything up again for me. And I realized how much I loved it down there. And my brother and I actually tossed around the idea of moving down there for a little while. But then we both got word that the company we were working for was sold and they were going to be shutting it down. So we were both losing our jobs right then and there, which kind of made it more of a reality of, well, do we pick up and when do we move down to Florida now? At the time, I was pretty heavy into wrestling, and the WWE just partnered with Full Sail University, and they were doing NXT down there. If you don't know what NXT is, it's basically the AAA of the major leagues for wrestling. And I was interested in trying to actually land a position in the NXT school, going to wrestling school down there. I was actually in the process of talking to Full Sail University too, because I was obsessed with film. So now I find myself thinking, do I relocate down to Orlando and kind of start over down there? But, things happen, relationships, family, everything comes into play when that type of thing happens. And we decided just not to go down. It wasn't the right time. So fast forward a little bit more, I end up starting my own cleaning business, kind of following in my father's footsteps and kind of focusing on some other things that I was trying to build at the time too. I was pretty heavy into the overall theme of nostalgia. As a kid, with my parents working all the time, I heavily relied on just being a kid. I was at the community center every day playing basketball. I was doing a lot of drawing. I was reading a lot of comic books. All of those types of things came and made a big play in my life. And I wanted to somehow build a brand based off of nostalgia. So I started Nostalgic Ways, which was a clothing brand that was inspired by the 80s and 90s cartoons and movies and comic books and all those types of things. And it seems that I became a workaholic. I was putting in 60 hours a week, every week. And then my wife, she was pregnant. We had our first son, Giancarlo, and the grind just kept going. Then I was working even more, just trying to build some sort of foundation for my family with the end game of, being able to step away and enjoy life whenever I wanted to. But I somewhat got hypnotized and was just working and working and working. And then I decided to take a step away from Nostalgic Ways for a little while. And my wife and I and my mother-in-law, we opened a restaurant. So then, it was even more, literally 80 hours a week, 40 hours with the cleaning, 40 hours with the restaurant. And we didn't go on a vacation for probably about 5 years. And, I forgot what it was even like not to work 80 hours a week. In this time, my wife had even taken trips herself down to Florida and gone to Disney and asked me to come, but I was just so stuck on working. And also it was just me at the time with my cleaning business. I had no employees. So I would have to find coverage, and you hope people do the job the way you want it done. And, that's a whole nother story. But there was no thoughts of Disney. There was no thoughts of Universal. It was just grind and work. So then finally it came time where my wife said, I want to bring our son, Giancarlo, to Disney for the very first time. And this is crazy to say now, but I was opposed to going. I was not sure if I was going to go. And, it became a little bit of a fight between my wife and I. And she said, you're going to miss your son's first time to Disney. This is how deep I was into working. So, I really sat down and thought about it and realized how badly I needed to go. It's been years since I've gone. The last time I went I was probably about 18 or 19. Now I'm 29, 30. So it's been just about 10 years. And I say, you know what? I'm going to figure some things out. I'm going to see if I can get some coverage for work. And the restaurant will be okay. Everything's going to be fine. Let's get down there. So she puts this whole plan together. She plans the entire trip. I have nothing to do with the planning of this trip. I just let her do every single thing. We ended up staying at an Airbnb down in Orlando, which was beautiful. All of the bedrooms were Disney themed. And we do 4 days in Disney and 2 days in Universal. And we have a action-packed vacation. And the whole time I'm there, the nostalgia is just overflowing. Seeing my son's face for the first time as he sees the castle and Mickey, and going to Universal and seeing Spider-Man, riding the Spider-Man ride, and like that was the ride that made me fall in love with Universal so much. To now see my son riding the ride in a full circle moment, it made me realize, wow, like, yes, work hard and grind hard, but at the same time, you're only going to live once. You have to take advantage of these beautiful moments. And if you can afford them and you can make them happen, go, like the magic and the nostalgia that your family is going to feel is never going to be forgotten. So as I'm there, I'm just realizing, like, as an adult now and having this business mind and this business aspect on basically looking at everything in my life, I'm looking around at Disney and I'm just thinking, wow, like what goes into this place is just, it's unbelievable. And there's not a lot of things in my life these days that amaze me. And I'm sitting there looking at the way everything is being done and the way everything's being managed and how perfect everything is. And I'm just saying, this is amazing. Like there's, like I said, there's not a lot of things that amaze me in this world. And Disney just amazes me. And I'm sitting and I'm thinking to myself, as if I don't have enough on my plate already, how can I get involved? Like, how could I be a part of this greatness? I want to be working in Disney one day, or working, doing design work for Disney or Universal or something. I'm thinking to myself, how do I get myself there? Well, it's going to be pretty hard because I own 2 physical businesses that literally are in Scranton, Pennsylvania. For me to just walk away from those, I then have no form of income whatsoever. So I'm sitting and I'm talking to my wife about it. And I'm like, how do I be a part of this magic? Like, how could I be a part of Disney? And that was it. The trip was over. We left. And, I would say, just like everybody else, when you first come back from a trip, you're a little bit depressed. And I find myself in my buildings late at night, just thinking about it, like, how do I get down there one day? How do I be a part of that? Where would I fit in to Disney or Universal or whatever the case is? So also at the same time, I have an uncle who I've brought up on the show many times, Uncle John, and they also love Disney. And he reaches out to me, long story short, and him, his wife, and his 2 kids, they all moved down to Orlando, and they basically all get jobs in Disney. My Uncle John is security. My cousin Moose works right at Casey's Corner. My cousin Morgan, she works at the Irish Pub in Disney Springs. And then my aunt, she was able to transfer from her job right to a different location down in Orlando. So it just worked out so well. So in real time, all of a sudden I see like people I know, my family, making this trip down to Jersey, or I'm sorry, not Jersey, down to Orlando. And they're making it happen in real time, and it makes me start thinking a little bit more like, what can I do to get down there? Like, look at everything I have here in Scranton. I can't just walk away from this, but I'm really just feeling so passionate about somehow being a part of the magic. It's on my mind every day. So as a guy who cleans buildings at nighttime by himself, I listen to a lot of music and I listen to a lot of podcasts. So to kind of fill that Disney feeling that I want, I just start listening to hours and hours and hours of Disney podcasts, literally 50 different podcasts. I'm waiting for each podcast to put out their weekly episode. You know, I'm doing 40 hours a week of cleaning, so I'm doing 40 hours a week of Disney podcasts. I'm learning about the best food to get in Epcot for this next festival. I'm learning about the wait times that are going on right now currently for Guardians of the Galaxy. Every single thing you can imagine. I'm just filling my brain with all of this information. And then I finally come across a podcast called Spill the D. And I fall in love with this podcast. This podcast was become one of my favorite ones to listen to. And they have an episode that was called How to Become a Travel Agent. So I was like, that's interesting. You know, I want to check that out. I want to listen to that because I wonder what that entails. I wonder if I could become a travel agent, you know? I wonder if I'd be able to get better deals on going down to Disney or whatever the case is, you know? So I listened to it, and I happened to hear the owner of 407 and Beyond, which is Bruce, being interviewed, and he's talking about what it would take to be a travel agent. And if you feel like this is something you can do, to reach out and to get an interview with him. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking to myself, this might be the closest way for me to be a part of the magic and to be a part of Disney in some way. I loved that trip that I went on with my son so much. I want to help other people book those trips. I want to be able to have somebody ask me a question and I know the answer right away. I want to help people build these memories. And I think that's the best way for me to get involved with this magic of Disney. So the first thing I do is I talk to my wife about it. And she's like, dude, how are you going to have time for another thing? You already work like crazy. So at the time, we just brought some management onto the restaurant. It took a lot of weight off of me. And it cleared up about 20 hours of work a week for me, where I was ready to devote my time to something that I wanted to be more passionate about. I love the cleaning business. I love the restaurant business. You know, it opened a lot of doors for us. I met so many different people too, doing both of these. But I want to be a part of this magic in some way or another. So I reach out to Bruce and I send an email and I get a Skype call with him and we hit it off. Super nice guy. He tells me his vision for the travel agency. I kind of get a look on the inside of the business. I'm looking at all the other travel agents and I see the community within it and how all of these people are helping other families book these trips and build this magic. And I realized this is it. Like, this is my way in to help people build this nostalgia, build these, like, that's my brand. Like, that's who I am. Like, that's why I introduce myself every episode as Nostalgic Belv. Like, that's important to me. Nostalgia is one of the most important feelings to me in my entire life. And I feel so deeply about that. And I want to help people build that, you know? So I end up having a second Skype call with Bruce. Things go well. And before you know it, I am brought onto the team as a travel agent for 407 and Beyond. You know, I do all the training and any other training at any other job, it's like, I feel like it would just feel like a chore. Like all of the training that I did for 407 just was so much fun, just building my knowledge and being able to, when I'm answering all these questions and I know the answers immediately, it just felt like I belong there, So within 3 months of going to Disney, now I'm booking another trip because now I have the knowledge. I know where to find the best deals. I know where to find the cheapest flights. I know, the best resorts to stay at in certain months. And then 3 months later, I'm going back again, So it's like everything just seems to be falling into place now. What seemed unreachable is now right in my hands. My family, we found ourselves, if you get the right deals and you do it at the right times, it's affordable. You could find yourself down at Disney and find yourself down Universal. Now I'm telling other people, and now I'm in my restaurant, with all the people that I see coming in, my regulars, and I'm telling them, and I'm helping people plan these trips. And I feel so fulfilled, and they're calling me and they have questions and I have answers right away. And I finally feel like I'm in a place where I belong. So then one of my friends, they recommend, dude, you love the podcast. You listen to these podcasts all the time. You should start your own. So then here we are. Meet me on Main Street, and we're on episode 8 already, which it just feels like we just started yesterday, which is crazy. And I'm sure, one day when we're on episode 100, it's going to feel like, it just started. But yeah, that's how we ended up coming into play here. And now for the first time in the first week of September, I'm going to be flying out to Orlando and I'm going to be doing my first training with Disney and Universal. And I'm going to be meeting Bruce in person and some of the other travel agents. And I'm just super excited and I feel very blessed to be a part of that and to have that in front of me right now. So those comments and those messages that I got on social media, on TikTok and Instagram, I appreciate you guys asking for this because I want this to be, this is not just a job for me. Like, this is actually so much more than that. Doesn't even feel like a job. This is something I love to do, and it's something I'm extremely passionate about, and I enjoy helping people do this. Because, I did a quote the other day for somebody, and it was somebody who just thought that Disney was so unreachable for their family. And after I sat down and, learned about their budget and broke down everything that they can do to be able to bring their family there, what they thought was impossible was actually far from it. And now they're going to be booking their first trip to Disney very soon. So I'm thankful. I'm just very thankful for the way everything plans out. And I believe everything happens for a reason. And with that being said, if you are somebody who feels similar, I highly advise you to go on 407 and Beyond's website and become a travel agent. Reach out, do the application, do the interview, and if everything goes smoothly, join this team, because it's just such a good community. If I ever even have a question, about something I'm not really 100% sure of, let's say, I've never been on a Disney cruise and I have a question about Disney cruise. We have so many agents that are so knowledgeable that could help you. This is such a good thing to be a part of. And once again, if you feel the same way as I highly recommend to take the step. So I don't want to spend any more time on that than I have to. I would like to cover something more Disney related. But once again, this was requested, so I did it. I want to talk about the new festival that's coming to Epcot, which of course is going to be the Food and Wine Fest. Food and Wine Fest is going to start August 28th and it's going to carry all the way to November 22nd. So I will be there. I'm flying in September 6th. So you already know you're going to see a lot of videos of all of the food that you can get at all of the pavilions, because when I'm there, I like to eat. Doesn't matter how hot it is, how humid it is. I am stuffing my face and I'm still going to ride all of those rides. So I highly suggest follow me on TikTok, follow me on Instagram if you don't already. On Instagram, my personal is Nostalgic Belv. And if you want to check out my travel Instagram, that one is Belv Books Magic. And on TikTok, I am Nostalgic Belv. You already know I'm going to be posting all of that food, all of the drinks, and all of the above. So we're back to the Food and Wine, August 28th to November 22nd. I've been doing my research. I'm trying to find some sneak peeks of some food. There's really not too much they're putting out there just yet. As of now, we know there's going to be 35 different locations that we can eat from. And of course, we could play Remy's Hide and Seek Scavenger Hunt, which is a hunt that they do every single year. It makes things interesting. It's another thing to do with the kids. And if you finish the hunt, sometimes there's a little gift that they'll give you as well. Of course, we also have the Eat to the Beat. The 2025 band list has already been revealed, and there's pretty much going to be a band playing almost every single night. I mentioned this in one of the earlier episodes about some of the bands that we're going to be playing, but I'm just going to go through and read some more. We got Joey Fatone, Mercy Me, KT Turnstile, Toby Mac, Starship. We got Tiffany, Jesse and Joy, the Baha Men, The Fray, Hanson, Hoobastank, Smash Mouth, Boys to Men, David Archuleta, Jordan Sparks, Bowling for Soup, The Beach Boys. There's so many good bands and good singers that are going to be on this list. And this is completely free as long as you have your entry to Epcot that day. There is no extra charge to watch the Eat to the Beat bands, which is just it's awesome. It's a nice addition that Disney does to give you more for your money. With the festival starting later on this month, the 28th, we can expect that all of the food is going to be revealed very soon. And when it is, you already know I'm going to do a full episode covering every single food that is going to be offered at Epcot. So, I'm looking forward to that, guys. I'm a foodie, obviously. I own a restaurant. I love food. If you guys want, check out my last video on TikTok. I just did my full review on the boathouse down at Disney Springs. What a great experience I had there. I talked about it more in the last episode as well. But if you want to see more of a visual, make sure you check out that video. So guys, we're just about 30 minutes in right now. I'm going to call it there. But with all that being said, we have a lot to look forward to in these next couple weeks, next couple months with the holidays coming. Just good vibes, good times of the year. I'm a big fall guy, so I'm really looking forward to the fall coming. And, if you can, subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. You know the routine, guys. That helps the podcast so much. It helps push it up in the listings, and it helps share it to new people. And of course, if you know somebody who's interested in the genre of Disney or Universal, share this podcast with them as well. Follow me on the socials. I'm going to be putting some announcements up there. I always share my trips and videos and all that type of thing. And I do have another fun announcement coming. My brand that I mentioned earlier, Nostalgic Ways. It was a clothing brand that I ran a couple years ago. Sometimes life gets busy. We had my son. We opened up the new restaurant and everything. Nostalgic Ways kind of got put on the back burner. But Nostalgic Ways is going to be returning. It's coming back. And we're going to be producing some really cool Disney and Universal inspired clothing. And it's just something I'm really excited about. I'm working with some artists right now. They're drawing up some rough drafts for us right now and some mock-ups. And I'm talking to a few printing companies that do some really, really good work. So just stay tuned, guys. Follow me on the socials. Keep checking back and listen to the podcast because I have a lot of fun stuff coming, and I'm extremely excited to share all of it with you. So with that being said, guys, take care. I hope you guys have a great day, and meet me next week on Meet Me on Main Street. Bye-bye.